All right. Well, I am Alexis James Wagner. I'm the Marketing and Digital Education Director for Westar, if you weren't already aware of that. And I am here with David Wheeler-Reed, who is one of our newer scholars joining Westar. And so David, I'm just going to kind of let you talk a little bit about your background, your current work, and what you're doing now, and kind of how that relates to some of the work that Westar is doing, just to get a little snapshot of what you've been up to.
Yeah. So I went did my PhD at the University of Toronto. And so I knew about Westar there because of John Kloppenborg. Okay. And I wasn't really involved with it, but I was sympathetic to what it was doing. And after I graduated from Toronto, I did a postdoc for a few years at Yale University. And while I was working with Dale Martin, I started reading more and more stuff on the Westar Institute. And then I met Harry Attridge, who works with Westar. And I wrote my first book while I was at Yale, Regulating Sex in the Roman Empire, and which really didn't have anything to do with anything Westar was doing. But because of that book, I started to meet people that were connected with Westar. And what happened was I was at the Columbia New Testament seminar, and Elizabeth Castelli mentioned Hal Taussig to me, and got the two of us talking to one another. And Hal had read my book unbeknownst to me and called me one day and said he wanted me to come and talk at the national meeting that's going to be out in Denver with SBLAAR, and talk about gender theory and queer theory, and how I would think of combining gender and queer theory with stuff that the Christianity seminar is doing with other stuff that Westar has already done. I'm supposedly supposed to figure that out in another month and a half when I turn in this paper.
Yeah.
I haven't figured that all out yet.
Bothering you about the deadline when it comes.
Yeah. I have it written down somewhere that I might need to write this in October. So it was, the more I started talking to Hal, I thought, maybe I want to be part of this group. A lot of the stuff that I'd read by Westar scholars, I liked. I was teaching a lot of it to my undergrads. They had no idea, obviously, what Westar was or the Jesus Seminar. And on a phone conversation one day with Hal, I just said, I kind of need a community of scholars where I can bounce ideas off of. And I liked, when I was reading through Funk's book, Honest to Jesus, I liked all of his stuff about, being a public intellectual and a public scholar. And I realized after writing my first book that that's what I was doing in that book. Was I wanted to talk to scholars, but I also wanted to talk to this educated public audience. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like this would be a good fit.
Yeah.
So it was not something I ever planned on happening. It was really over a meeting and a phone call.
I feel like that's what happens. I've been doing some of this with members as well, like long-term members, kind of talking to them and getting their history of interacting with Westar and what drew them initially and why they stayed. And it's a lot of stories about, like, someone told me that they thought that this would be a good fit for what I was interested in, and and the piece of, like, looking for a like-minded group. I mean, I think that's true for scholars and for lay people as well, because I know from, I guess still semi, and, I work in a church, so not really laity, but, not necessarily scholar, but just from my own experience, like, of frustration with, like, does anyone else want to talk about this stuff all the time? It doesn't feel like it. Like, where can I find these people that will engage that with me? And so I feel like the community piece is almost as important the work itself.
Yeah, it's almost like scholars need safe spaces or something, where it's just, you need a group of people where you can go, hey, I have this wacky idea, or I have this crazy idea that I want to talk about. And, sometimes it's lonely when you don't feel like you can bounce ideas off of people. And, the more I started thinking about stuff that I was writing of, I don't want to write safe things. I wanted to write provocative things. And, this is cliche, but I wanted to go kind of wherever evidence led me, or leads me. And sometimes you can't always do that. And in talking with Hal and others who are involved with Westar, it was like, but you can do this here. And they'll, they seem like they will have a good conversation back with you about it.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing is, I realized that probably a lot of the people that are in Westar have had similar experiences with the church, and I've kind of gone through different phases with it. And I'm still very much tied to the church. I'm Catholic, but I kind of have realized beyond being a liberal Catholic, I'm more on the radical end of Catholicism. And it's sometimes very, very hard because you know, when I teach in a Catholic school, and I sometimes have to be careful what I say, what I do, you know, what books I assign. And this seemed like it would be a really good outlet for me.
Yeah. I used to teach as an adjunct at a Christian liberal arts undergrad at university in Nashville, which I mean, I give them a lot of credit because they allowed me to do that with the education from Union and, you know, the background that I have, and they were very supportive and everything. But yeah, I definitely got like at least a couple evaluations every semester that was like, is she even a Christian? Like, that didn't come across, and I taught Hebrew Bible, you know, but like, and like anything, and I would be like, so I'd have to start like making it very clear, like, you know, I am, you know, I do identify as Christian, and like, however, let's have some conversations about historicity and historical critical method and all those things. So yeah, I imagine that even in the Catholic context would be even more challenging, where there's a lot more universally recognized dogma, because even within like a you know, an evangelical kind of environment, like it's, you know, you have progressive evangelicals, you have the Trump evangelical, you know, and then you have like a whole space in between. Whereas like, and I know Catholicism is not monolithic, but there definitely is like accepted teaching, and there's a pope, and there's, you know.
And I usually find myself a lot of times saying, you know, to a student, are you asking me that as a scholar? Or are you asking what I'm supposed to think as a Catholic? Are you asking me personally what I think? You know, and I think most students get it, but it's sometimes there's always that fear of like, am I gonna say the wrong thing? And where I am, it sounds like where you were is, you know, they're very open to allowing you to do this, which is good. But then you wonder sometimes, like, how long can I keep doing this?
Which is why I always felt like being an adjunct was in many ways a blessing, because it was kind of like, well, you know, if it's like being a friend, you know, like if it doesn't work out, I'm not like giving up my healthcare and my, you know, my family's income and all that. But I can definitely imagine, given that you do work in like gender, sexuality, queer theory, that like in a Catholic school, that might make you walk a little bit of a razor's edge.
Yeah, a little bit sometimes. Yeah, sometimes not. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. It just But I was always like concerned of, you know, when in writing the book that I wrote, of like people were telling me, if you can't hide what you think anymore. It's all out there now. So that's, you know, so I was like, I can't kind of like try to get around an answer to anything anymore, because somebody could just say, well, on page whatever you said, so do you still think that? It's like, oh yeah, well, so.
Yeah, which is kind of freeing though too, right? I mean, like, you're like,
it is.
There it is, you know?
There it is. That's just who I am, and this is what I think. So
yeah, awesome. Well, I'm excited to have you be part of the community and to hear more of what you have to say at the fall meeting once you write the paper. And
all the ideas, they're up there.
Very interesting, and I hope that other people get a little bit of a glimpse of kind of who you are and what you have to offer. And I'm excited to work more with you.
Great. Sounds like fun. It was really nice meeting you.
Yeah, you as well. Thanks, David.
Take care.